Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports.
The business of sports can be intimidating or hard for a startup to break into.
We really appreciate when our owners are actually there, with us through the journey.
Teams, ours especially, have been very intentional to diversify at all levels of the company.
I think we're in the golden years for the NFL and college football.
Our demographic reach has continued to expand.
This is going to be really unlocking the streaming platform for sports fans.
Sports valuations are rising. We'll see when they peak.
You don't have to be the best in your sport to make a whole ton of money.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr.
And I'm Damian Sassower.
Scarlet Fu will join us later in the program. Coming up, we get ready for the NHL season with the president and CEO of the reigning Stanley Cup winners, the Florida Panthers.
We went through some tough years early on to get it going in the right direction, but these last 5 years, we've consistently been in the playoffs. We went to the Cup Finals 2 years ago, got a taste of it. But now that we've won it, we were so proud of the players and the staff, and the market. The market is just on fire with hockey. They're so excited.
Plus, we take a look at the firm behind the brand new training facility and headquarters for the Phoenix Mercury. Only one of three built exclusively for a WNBA team. All that and more is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, we talk Nike. The legendary sneaker and sports brand is struggling lately, and a lot of people are pointing fingers at soon-to-be former CEO John Donahoe's vision. Nike announced this past week it would be pulling former executive Elliot Hill out of retirement to replace Donahoe as CEO. Bloomberg's Bhasin and Lily Meier have been following the drama at Nike and wrote a piece for Bloomberg Business Week about what went wrong with Donahoe's tenure, and they're here now to take us through it. Kim, I'm going to start with you. Donahoe, he was tapped to lead Nike back in 2020, and it seemed like he had a good plan until he didn't.
So yeah, basically in those first years, like lifestyle sneakers, those are Air Force Ones. Pandas were the big one. That's the black and white low top dunk that you see absolutely everywhere now. And those two and Air Jordans, like Jordan 1s, the OG 1985 looking Jordans. These are all very old shoes, right? And none of them are real performance shoes anymore. You don't wear Jordan 1s on the court. That's weird. You wear the most recent type of basketball shoe. So these are lifestyle sneakers. They're meant to be worn on the sidewalk. They're meant to be worn on the streets, and they're not the old core Nike performance thing that we used to see. Now there weren't sports going on, if you recall, in 2020, right?
Hey, there was marble racing. Come on.
There was marble racing. There was World Chase Tag. Remember the tag? Yeah. But going forward from there, eventually, when those lifestyle sneakers started to slow down, and the market was saturated with them, Nike hadn't really innovated enough on the back end. So back at the LeBron James R&D Center in Beaverton, Oregon, right? There just weren't enough new products ready to replace those lifestyle sneakers.
Well, Kim, let's talk about what John Donahoe did. John Donahoe, formerly of eBay, a Bain management consultant, he knows how to, he's a Bain guy. They know how to cut costs. They know how to drive revenues, improve margins until they don't. And one of the things that apparently John did, and I read this in your article, and it was just, I had no idea, but now, someone who goes into the mall and goes to Foot Locker to, buy a pair of sneakers realizes exactly what they did. They basically pulled a lot of Nikes off the shelves, not just at Foot Locker, but off of websites like Amazon, and their distribution channels were quickly, taken up by other manufacturers, right? And so, now I guess if I'm hearing you correctly, and why the stock price is, crashing and cratering here, is because they kind of, on the back end with their distribution, they really kind of, they failed to deliver. Talk to us a little bit about that and how they can rectify the ship there, if at all.
Yeah, this goes back to the previous CEO, and then I can hand it off to Lily from here, who knows a whole lot about this. Back in Mark Parker's days, we all know Mark Parker. He's the big CEO of
genius,
Nike, the genius sneaker designer, revered by all, who brought Nike over the past, the prior 15 years or so to where it was before the pandemic.
Completed Phil Knight sentences.
Yeah. He tried to move to more direct to consumer. Why? Because you have better margins that way. You cut out the middleman. The middleman is the retailer. But he didn't quite have the expertise as like the sneaker guy to build up Nike's e-commerce channels, their app, those direct ways of buying from Nike.com and the sneakers app and everything. That's why they brought in John Donahoe. He's from eBay, from Bain. He used to run the Bain West Coast office. Like he's the e-commerce guy, and he was the one who could come in and do that for Nike.
Yeah, so he tried to help Nike focus on their online store. They wanted to prioritize their direct-to-consumer sales, selling sneakers and everything online. And so in mid-2020, he started to cut relationships with a lot of their retailers. So with Bob's stores, with City Blue, with DSW, the list goes on and on. He pulled the sneakers off of the shelves. Which
some of these are really big, too,
yeah.
Right? Foot Locker is its biggest partner.
Yep.
And Nike is Foot Locker in both directions. They're their biggest partners. They didn't remove all shoes from Foot Locker, but they reduced them. So what was 75% of all Foot Locker purchases used to be Nike, that went down to 65%. To 70%. That went down to 60% a year later. Like that's a major pullback. And some of these other retailers are huge. It's like Macy's, Urban Outfitters, DSW, as Lily just said. Like these are huge retailers.
You could walk into the mall, back in the day, when I had jet black hair, and you could go and get a pair of Nikes anywhere. And then it seems like John Donahoe decided, hey, you know what? Let's cut out the middleman and let's try to sell it ourselves. And that's when it seems like it all went to hell in a handbasket.
Exactly.
And what happens to that shelf space that Nike vacates, right? Suddenly it's empty. And those retailers are looking around thinking, okay, well, we have all this space that Nike doesn't want anymore. We're going to replace them with every other brand, all of its competitors.
Exactly, yeah. So then people could go into like a Foot Locker and there's On and Hoka and Brooks and all these other shoe companies that took up the space and caught up with Nike because they had all these shelf space in the major retailers.
A lot of the stuff that has happened with Nike, there is a line in there from the employees, Nike employees. We love your business acumen, Donahoe, but we don't like your baneness.
The baneness. They do not like the baneness over there. A lot of cost cutting happened.
Well, let me take a step further. Pershing Square. Bill Ackman now has a very large stake and a building stake in the company, and we know how these sort of vulture investors, like to operate, right? Like they like to make change, and talk to us a little bit about what comes next for Nike. Talk to us about where management is, what kind of confidence the shareholders have in the company, and whether or not they have the resources to right the ship here.
Yeah, the question comes down to leadership at this point and what the board decides to go forward with. So in our story, we report that John Donahoe's contract is up in January when he is eligible to retire. Now, we don't know what decisions have been made at this point, but whoever leads Nike going forward has to rebuild those relationships with those retailers. Nike is already starting to do that. The Foot Locker CEO, there's a new one from a couple years ago. Her name's Mary Dillon, and she's been talking about how Nike and Foot Locker have been rebuilding that relationship, that they're getting more, retailers getting more input and visibility into Nike's future plans and the new shoes they're going to release and things like that. So there are steps being made to revert a little bit of some of the things that they've done.
It's because, listen, the man can run a business. I can't even run a daggone faucet. But I have to say that there was that point when he was ready to cut more staff, and the speech he gave into either Lily or Kim that this was going to happen, it wasn't exactly a cuddly, come on, kumbaya hug.
Yeah, I mean, Phil Knight had been known for making these really amazing speeches. One employee even told us they were sometimes brought to tears by the speeches, a former employee. But yeah, I think people didn't quite like John's approach and felt like, he wasn't being that supportive of them. And, there's this one kind of now famous Zoom call where Donahoe got on and the chat blew up with employees, calling for him to step down, criticizing him, which was like a first in Nike history.
And like during these layoffs, there was this video that went viral among staff. Like, so as they're packing up their desks, people are sharing this thing around with each other, and it's the CEO from his old Silicon Valley days talking about leadership on this little panel, right, with a VC firm. And firings came up, like that topic. How do you deal with firings? And the CEO's there, and he's sipping from a little can of LaCroix, and he casually says, it just explains his philosophy. And I'm gonna read what he said from that. Say, okay, I have fired so many people in my career, and when I say fired, remember I grew up at Bain. For every 10 people we hired, we managed half out within 2 years. We managed 75% out within 5. So I learned that there, and you can't be afraid of that conversation.
Well, Damian, that was about as cuddly as a cactus.
Yeah, I mean, look, I just think about, someone like Mary Dillon, who's the chairman and CEO of Foot Locker, and I wonder, what it's going to take, to convince her to be on sides with, the fact that, we found religion here. We need you guys again. It's post-pandemic. People, there's foot traffic at malls again. You guys are in every mall. We'd love to put some Nikes on the shelves there. I mean, my question is also, I guess, does Mary Dillon see, a benefit here?
Yeah, you got to remember, like in the first couple years here, everything, it worked. Like this strategy was working. It works, sure. It grew 25%. Like Nike the goal was $50 billion. They set that goal years ago for 2020, and they were nowhere close by the time they hired John Donahoe. So that's one reason, like he wanted him to supercharge growth, right? And that's what he did. Like these lifestyle sneakers were going crazy, and Nike did get to $50 billion. But like at what cost, right? And there's some happy medium here between Nike and its retail partners where like everyone can get a piece of this.
Our thanks to Bloomberg's Kim Bhasin and Lily Meier for joining us. Find their latest piece on Nike online at Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg terminal. It is a great read. Up next, we turn to the WNBA and the architectural and design firm behind a brand new facility for the Phoenix Mercury. For my colleagues Damian Sassower and Scarlet Fu, I'm Michael Barr. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports, Bloomberg Radio around the world.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr. The Phoenix Mercury are one of only 3 WNBA teams that have a facility built exclusively for them. The majority of WNBA teams and women's sports teams in general still share arenas and facilities with men's teams. Gensler is a global architecture, design, and planning firm and the company behind the new groundbreaking facility for the Mercury. My colleagues Damian Sassower, Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent Jason Kelly, and Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent Vanessa Perdomo got a chance to speak with Gensler studio director and senior associate Elizabeth Pritchett about the new facility and how her firm is looking to close the gender gap in sports by creating training centers designed for women athletes. Let's listen in on that conversation.
So, Elizabeth, you have touched everything from the Chase Center Arena for the Golden State Warriors, the Cleveland Browns. Now it's called Huntington Bank Field. You've done large-scale renos for Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. But I'd love to hear what you're doing in Phoenix. I mean, there's a certain 1960s Coors Brewing distribution center that is now home to the Phoenix Mercury. I'm curious to hear what that project looked like. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, absolutely. It's really a game changer. Super excited to jump into that. just real quick before doing so, for listeners who are not familiar with Gensler, we're a global architecture and design firm. You've all walked through probably, hundreds of our projects. We've designed everything from sports buildings, which we'll talk about in a moment, to airports, hotels, etc. Jumping into the Phoenix Mercury, it's rare in the profession that I'm in to be part of a team of amazing designers and architects and, quite frankly, owners, visionary owners, who are really carrying the torch for a new project type. This has been a long time coming. What's happening it started in Seattle with the creation of the first ever women's WNBA practice facility, then moved to the Aces, Las Vegas Aces, under the leadership and visionary of Mike Davis. And then here in Phoenix, the project that we're going to jump into, Gensler designed and opened an incredible, groundbreaking project in Phoenix for the Phoenix Mercury. It opened in June. So I'm happy to walk you through some of how we kind of got there. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think for us, we'd love to hear how it got there. When you're thinking about how this all came together, like you said, it started with the Aces and the Storm, and Mark Davis over at the Aces is, just this visionary owner for women's sports, and really cool to see those both be very standalone, but this is a little bit different, right? This is a franchise that also has an NBA team, and now they'll have their own WNBA facility. So I'd love to hear how those worked differently and how this one came together.
Well, a couple of things. I think the biggest thing here for the Las Vegas Aces was really, again, having at the foundation really a desire to make change quickly. Matt Ishby bought the Mercury in 2023 and made it a priority from the outset to create this state-of-the-art facility. He didn't want to just sort of hit the bar. He wanted to exceed the bar. And that really, it really starts with, of course, the talented athletes. But to think about it in this way, to go to your job every day where you don't have an office, how are you going to do your best? How are you going to perform at your best? And it's just incredible to me that these athletes were going to work every day and not having a place to do their jobs. And so just at the most basic, Matt and Mike and some of the others said, we're flipping the switch. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this differently, and we're going to make massive change. And so it really started from that point of view. So there's just a level of excellence that's desired from this team and an expectation to perform at the highest level for both the athletes. We were able to create a facility for them to practice their craft, to be at the leading edge of sport performance. And we were asked to sort of step up to the table and really did that. We're really proud of the facility that we built. The players are thrilled to be able to, come to work there every day, to call it their own, and to have it be a place that really sets the bar for women's, not just, with the WNBA and basketball, but the trend is going to be moving this into other sports so that there's just continued equity across the board.
Yeah, Elizabeth, you went exactly where I was hoping to go next, and we've all done a lot of work around this, and Vanessa especially, and I have looked at, what's next in sports. We literally had a series around that, and one of the things we featured was, and Vanessa went there, the Kansas City facility that is the first of its kind for women's soccer. And so you sort of weave that into everything that you're saying. I would love to understand, and I know our listeners would love to understand, the business case underneath this in terms of is this a response to more demand from fans? Is it, and sponsors and other sort of economic stakeholders here? Is this in anticipation? Help us understand the economics around these sorts of decisions as you're working with these partners.
Yeah, it's a really great question, and I think it's nuanced. I think there's maybe a couple of answers there. I think it's a little bit of, the perfect storm, if you will, in a good way, of different sort of synergies kind of coming together. I think that, back to Madishby and the ownership, knowing that two things: when you're giving your employees and the athletes the space they need to both be their physical best, their mental best, just giving them a facility where they can perform at the leading edge, they're going to be happier, they're going to do their job better, they're going to perform better. Mm-hmm. That, of course, coincides with, Caitlin Clark and all of I'm just talking specifically about basketball here, all of the hype and all of the just the excitement around college basketball that's been around for years for men, but to see that bleed over into the women's side at the same time really, I think, helped propel and move this story forward a little bit faster. I think this has been years in the making. I mean, there has been amazing athletes performing at the highest level in basketball and, quite frankly, in all other sports, and they just are not getting the front pages, right? And so to now see investment to support the talent of these women athletes, to have them move forward like this is huge. The business side of it, I think it's interesting because the viewership is up. The viewership is up all around for college sports. There's been a new business deal, and you're going to have to do your homework here, and because I don't know the exact math, but right after this facility opened, there was a viewership a deal where at the WNBA where they were, exceeded expectations in terms of what that deal was. And part of that money then funnels back into the athletes. So it's this kind of circular thing, if you will.
I would like to get back to this really quick about the training facility specifically. And, like we said, you've worked on tons of other projects, the Chase Center and the LACFC, all these things. Those are men specific projects. So for when you're working in a female sports team specific facility, how do you make that different and tailor it to female athletes and what they want, what they need? Because I'm assuming, you guys talk to the players and things like that. And we know that a lot of sports science isn't dedicated to women. So how do you make this training facility for them so they can perform at the best level?
You hit the nail on the head. The basic quality of men's and women's practice facilities, should be equal. Athletes of both genders are both aspiring to the edge of human performance. We have seen, however, that there are through a lot of questions and conversations and inquiry and digging with the various women teams, that there are differences in terms of needs and desires and wants. And so a lot of the program, as we call it in this field, the sort of organization and how we think about putting our buildings together, what the needs are, came from the conversations, the fact finding, the question asking that we did of the teams and the organizations, and every team's different. I would say, in general, there's a real focus for women, female athletes, really on preparation. And that goes, back to mental preparation, having rooms for mental health, quiet rooms or meditation rooms. Of course, there are nursing and mothers' rooms. That's a commonplace in a lot of our buildings that we do these days. We've designed family lounges, places for, family, for grandparents to hang out and to be there with, perhaps some young children while practice is happening. We're seeing, we're seeing the desire for places to promote personal brands. So folks are, different athletes are sponsored. They can, take a podcast conversation. Then of course, top of the line nutrition, they oftentimes want the space, the building to be open 24/7 so that, these athletes can come in and get their meal plan tailored to their needs, their nutrition plan tailored to their needs at any time of day. So really all of this is to support top performance, and that top performance is going to look different to different folks. There are, underwater treadmills, there's cold and hot plunge pools, there's all of those bells and whistles, which are not even bells and whistles. They're needed components of thriving and performing at the top. So those are all, these are things that men, some of these, there are crossover with male facilities, but I think a lot of it was about how we organize the building as well in terms of, is the mother's room next to the grooming area? What are the, down to having, the right type of hot tools for hair? What type of hot tools do they prefer? Let's make everything built in. Think about it like, we design these spaces like you would your own beautiful bathroom space at home where there's a place for everything. So when you get there, you can feel your best and look your best and then be your best on the court.
That's Elizabeth Pritchett. She's studio director and senior associate for Gensler, the firm behind the state-of-the-art training facility and headquarters for the Phoenix Mercury, speaking with my colleagues Damian Sassower, Bloomberg Originals chief correspondent Jason Kelly, and Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent Vanessa Perdomo. Up next, we look ahead to the start of the NHL's season with the Florida Panthers. President, CEO of the team, alternate governor, Matt Caldwell. I'm Michael Barr. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr. The reigning Stanley Cup winning Florida Panthers are ready to start another season.
Florida trying to end it up against the wall, which would be fitting. 3 seconds to go. The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup.
Club's preseason opener is this weekend, and the regular season kicks off in early October. To talk about the team's recent success and to preview the upcoming NHL season, my colleagues Damian Sassower and Scarlet spoke with Florida Panthers president, CEO, and alternate governor Matt Caldwell. Let's take a listen in on that conversation.
You guys won your first ever Stanley Cup championship. Of course, you'd been in the playoffs pretty consistently. Talk about how the organization is feeling heading into this next season.
Listen, we're feeling great. I think anyone coming off a Stanley Cup win is still on cloud nine. We certainly are. It's been a long time coming for the franchise. We won it in our 30th year in existence. Our ownership bought the team about 10 years ago. If you're all hockey fans out there, it was a massive turnaround situation with the team. And we went through some tough years early on to get it going in the right direction. But these last 5 years, we've consistently been in the playoffs. We went to the Cup Finals 2 years ago, got a taste of it. But now that we've won it, we were so proud of the players and the staff, and the market. The market is just on fire with hockey. They're so excited about the team, and it's wonderful that we've created a hockey town in South Florida.
Matt, you joined the Florida Panthers back in 2014. I mean, what a decade it's been for you. You are a former West Point cadet. You served time in the U.S. Army. You and Vinny Viola, the owner of the Florida Panthers. Talk to us about how the two of you together have built this championship team. Talk to us about the success of GM Bill Zito, bringing in head coach Paul Maurice. Talk to us about the team, the structure, and what comes next.
Yeah, so when Vinny, as you mentioned, Vinny's a West Point graduate, myself as well, graduate of the academy in 2002. And when he bought the team, we knew that there was a lot of things that we had to do on the ice, finding the right, roster and finding the right, GM and coach. But putting that aside, starting with the culture that we wanted to establish, given our military experience, everything you all know, teamwork and hard work and, always putting the fans first, finding people that are aligned with that kind of mindset. That's what we stated from day one, that, we were going to bring respect back into the organization. As I mentioned earlier, the team was really struggling before the Viola ownership. So there was a lot of work to do in the community with our fan base. And, we promised them that we would build a winner. We didn't know, when we would win the Stanley Cup, but we promised that we would just always have conviction and be relentless in that pursuit. And then After learning sports ownership, it was the first time Vinny was at least a majority owner, in hockey. It took us some time to find the right hockey expert. And, when COVID hit, we led a GM search process and found Bill Zito, who's been, the best hire we've ever made. These last 5 years under his watch have been just phenomenal. And he also led us to Coach Maurice, and that combination has just been absolutely transformational to the hockey side.
Matt, I just need to follow up here. I'm such a big Vinny Viola fan. For those who don't know, he's the founder and chairman of Virtue Financial. I mean, he's just an amazing chap, and he's a tough chap. He was born here in Brooklyn.
Yes.
He's an Italian, American. He's tough. Talk about tough. I mean, the man, cut his teeth trading oil on the NYMEX, where he eventually rose to be, I think chairman at one point. I mean, how did that experience? I mean, you've worked closely with him, being an oil trader on the floor of the NYMEX. How does he take that skill set and translate it to the Florida Panthers?
Well, listen, he's a serial entrepreneur at heart. As you said, he started at least his civilian career, on the trading floor, very rough and tumble environment, which wasn't very different from his military experience. But he learned a lot about business. He went on to launch a number of companies, and that's part of the reason why he wound up naming me CEO is, for a market like South Florida, which is not New York, doesn't have, generations and generations of fans. When he bought the team, it was only 20 years old, which in sports is feels like it's, maybe just a level above an expansion team. So, there was a lot to clean up, and he said from the beginning, like, we're committed to excellence. We're never going to take, failure or no for an answer. And, he just demanded it every single day, every single season. He wanted to be the New York Rangers, today, not in 10 years. And he just kept that mindset from day one. And he sets the tone. And, sometimes you can hire, typical, industry types, people that have been experienced in bigger markets. But after a few years owning the team, he figured, listen, I have someone that he trusted in myself. I was working in his family office. I also have a finance background. I worked at Goldman Sachs, and he said, you'll at least be able to establish the culture and run the financials like the way I like to see things. Because ultimately, we have to be, at least break even or profitable. We have to be smart, make good fiscal decisions. And you'll find the right people on the hockey side, right? We don't want myself and Vinny drafting players or trading players. Of course we want to provide some input, but ultimately we want to hire the right people to guide us on the hockey side. And that's what led us to Bill Zito and Paul Maurice. And they've just fit perfectly into our culture. And you have to find folks that want to communicate, that are all about, being themselves and putting their ego aside and putting the team first. And that's not always the case, especially in sports. There's a lot of big egos.
Absolutely.
But Bill and Paul, exemplified that. And obviously their hockey expertise is second to none.
So, Matt, I got to ask you, you talk about this culture of excellence that you and the owner have put together through the Panthers organization. Florida has become this really big hotbed of hockey in the last 20, 30 years. The Tampa Bay Lightning, which are based in Central Florida in Tampa, won the Cup in 2004, 2020, and 2021. You guys just won the Cup in 2024. Talk a little bit about how you split up the Florida market. How do you build a hockey culture from nothing? Yes, we know there are a lot of transplants from the Northeast in the state of Florida, but you are creating a hockey culture from scratch in many ways. How do you do that with the Lightning, and how do you guys kind of divvy up the state?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I mean, the Lightning are our arch rival, like on the ice, but we have such deep respect for them and what they've accomplished. Jeff Minnick is an incredible owner. And a quick little stat for you, the Stanley Cup has been in Florida the last 5 years. You mentioned, 2 of the Cup wins that the Lightning had. They also went to a third Cup They wound up losing, but they were in the Cup 3 straight years. And then, 2 seasons ago, we went to the Cup, lost to Vegas, and then we won this last year. So I would have never imagined that, being a hockey fan all my life, that the Stanley Cup would travel through Florida, 5 straight years.
Right.
So they've always been, a great example for us. And we talk to them all the time and share best practices. As far as splitting up the market, the league rules, we're only able to market around a 75-mile radius around our arena to kind of give us like that exclusive territory. So just naturally, they're more, Tampa, Orlando focused. We're more, Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale and Miami focused. However, that being said, both those areas are highly traveled, big tourist destinations. So when we play the Rangers, for example, and the New Yorkers come to those games, they of course they wear their Ranger jerseys, but we still, get to meet them, try to encourage them to come to Panther games, especially if they're, snowbirds, or maybe they have a house here or they live here. We say, you know what, we understand you're going to wear, a Rangers jersey when New York is here, but there's 40 other games that you can come to and support us. And you know what, that's worked, because when someone, hockey's a diehard fan base, and it's smaller than like the NFL or the NBA, but the ones that love hockey, they love any kind of brand of hockey as long as it's competitive. So
you get them for 39 games, but you give them up for the Rangers game.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Matt, this is the business of sports, so I have to ask you a little bit about the business of running the Florida Panthers. We know you guys have absolutely crushed it in terms of attendance, up 25% over the last 2 years, ticket revenue up 50%, corporate partnerships revenue. I mean, you changed the name of the stadium, but I need to ask you about some of these big projects you guys have been involved with, the revitalization of the War Memorial Auditorium, the new practice facility you guys built. Talk to us a little bit about those things and the challenges in getting them up and running.
Yeah, I mean, the practice facility was so important for a number of reasons, because the Panthers traditionally, before the Viola family came in, players looked at the team as, a place that you can go and enjoy your lifestyle. You can go play golf, you can go to the beach, you have beautiful hospitality, but you're probably not going to win on the ice, but at least you have a good life, off the ice. And we had to change that whole, we called it like a country club, mentality. And Bill Zito, when he came in, he coined this phrase that we want to be a destination franchise, which is, yes, you're going to come here and live comfortably, but you're also going to win and be a part of a first-class organization. You're going to have the history of the big teams and the commitment to excellence, but you're also going to be able to have a great, lifestyle, like I said, off the ice. And we've really pursued that and have pushed that agenda, and building a brand new state-of-the-art practice facility. We just opened it during last season. All the opposing teams practice there, opposing GMs, come through and check it out. But it's a message, right? Yeah. It's a message to the league that we're serious and we're committed to being first class.
That's Matt Caldwell. He's president, CEO, and alternate governor for the NHL's Florida Panthers. He spoke with my colleagues Scarlet Fu and Damian Sassower. Now, if you missed any part of that conversation or any others from the show today, check it out on the Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast. Find that on Apple, Spotify, and all your favorite podcast platforms. And that does it for this edition of the Bloomberg Business of Sports. For my colleagues Scarlet Fu, Damian Sassower, and Bloomberg Originals sports correspondent Vanessa Perdomo, I'm Michael Barr. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.